What is self-victimization? I think we answer that question first by defining what we mean by victim. What is a victim? A victim is somebody solely at the mercy of somebody else, who cannot help the circumstances in which he or she finds him or herself. Children are victims of adults at times. Women can be victims of men who overpower them. We are victims when we can do nothing to help the bad situation in which we find ourselves. We cannot get out of it. But today there's an indiscriminate application of that term. And so it's blurred what we mean by victim. It almost mars the understanding of real victims, because we apply that label to all kinds of people who maybe aren't victims in the true sense of the word. Today, a victim is someone who's had her feelings hurt. And we see that in schools. They need to have these safe spaces for women who for young women and young men too, who have had their feelings offended by something they've heard, a viewpoint they disagree with. So they're considered victims because they've heard something difficult. And to me, that sort of takes away from our understanding of a true victim. So that can be some of what's happened with that term today. So we need to be careful in how we define it. A victim is someone who is powerless to change his or her circumstances. So by that definition, there are lots of things that we label victim today that we can actually imprison ourselves by instead of recognizing there's so much freedom. And it's not to take away from the very real suffering that we go through and the pain we go through, but let's be careful how we define that. Is that true? Really, are we really victims, or can we make some changes? We want to be careful to not allow. There's some people who think they're victims, or who define themselves that way, and it can be a way to escape responsibility, taking responsibility for their sin. Other times they're entrenched in this belief that they're victims and they feel hopeless to actually change their circumstances. I think about today how we call certain addictions diseases. And is that true? Or is the reality that they've become enslaved as a result of repeated bad choices? And so they in a sense can't get out because they've locked themselves into that. So in that sense, they are victims. They're victims of sin, but it's not hopeless. If you say, for example, that an addiction is a disease, you're kind of a victim of a disease. But if you say that addiction is repetitive bad choices that have enslaved you, there's hope in the gospel, because Jesus is about setting us free from addicting enslavements. And it might take a lifetime. But once our identity is in him, that's the trajectory of where we're going. And so, for example, when we no longer have to stand before a group and say, I'm Cindy and I'm an alcoholic. Now we can say, I'm Cindy and I'm a Christian. And yes, I do have some struggles with alcohol. So see how one is self-defining and the other is a fact about us that's true, but we're not a victim anymore, because our hope and our help is in Christ Jesus. And when he's our hope and our help, whether we're self-victimizing in ways we don't need to, or whether we're true victims of very real, painful things that have happened to us, the remedy is the same. We look at Jesus Christ. He is our balm. He is our remedy. He is our life. And because he was victimized for us on the cross, he purchased our freedom from all victimization. And as we look at him, as we focus on him, as we give our lives to him and lean into him, we find the freedom from those scars. Even though the scars linger, they don't define us. They don't keep wounding us. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.